I've never liked calling ahead to say when I'm arriving. It's a habit I've had since I was young. I like to see the surprise in my Helen's eyes when she sees me walk through the door early. Her eyes light up and she runs to hug me as if we were two newlyweds, even though we've been together for 42 years. Before I tell you how it all started, I have to ask you a favor. Please, write in the comments where you are watching me from. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your help is very important. That day, December 21st, I decided to end my shift as a rideshare driver early. Our coastal town was quiet, and I was just thinking about getting home to start preparing for the holidays with my wife. Christmas has always been special for us, even more so now that we are alone most of the time. Ever since Nathan, our only son, married Amber. Leaving already. Arthur? Roger asked me. Another driver who always parks near the terminal. But it's only 4 o'clock. I already met my quota for the day, my friend. I replied, putting my cell phone in my shirt pocket. And I want to surprise my wife. Roger laughed and slapped me on the back. 40 years married, and still with surprises. That's the way to do it, Arthur. I got into my car, 2016 Nissan Versa. I bought a few years ago when I quit construction. My body just couldn't take carrying cement bags and climbing scaffolding anymore at 62. I drove slowly through the streets, thinking about everything Helen and I had built together. Our house, small but decent, had taken us almost 30 years to finish. I laid every brick myself. We saved every dollar to buy materials, with her doing laundry and ironing for other people while I worked double shifts whenever there was work. As I turned the corner of our street, I noticed something strange. There was a car I didn't recognize parked in front of my house. A black Honda Civic. Pretty new. And next to it, Nathan's truck. I didn't expect to see him until Christmas Eve. 3 days later, I parked half a block away and walked slowly toward the house. Something didn't feel right. Nathan never visited us without warning, and certainly not with that car that wasn't his. As I got closer, I heard laughter coming from inside. Men's laughter, women's laughter, glasses clinking. But what stopped me dead in my tracks was seeing Helen, sitting alone on the small bench by the entrance, with her head down and her shoulders shaking. My wife was crying. I approached without making a sound, my heart pounding. "My love, what's wrong?" I whispered, crouching in front of her. Helen looked up, surprised and scared at the same time. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Arthur!" she exclaimed in a low voice, quickly wiping away her tears. "I wasn't expecting you so early. What's going on? Why are you crying?" I insisted, taking her hands in mine. They were cold despite the afternoon heat. She glanced nervously toward the half-open door of our house, from which laughter and lively conversations continued to pour. "It's nothing. Just," she began to say, but stopped when we heard our son's voice. "Come on, Mom, don't be like that. It's just one signature," Nathan shouted from inside, with that tone he used when he lost his patience. Mr. Harold and Mrs. Miriam came especially to help us with the papers. Nathan's in-laws, in our house, papers, signatures. A chill ran down my spine. "What papers is he talking about?" I asked Helen, lowering my voice even more. My wife squeezed my hands tightly, and I saw fear in her eyes, a fear I had never seen in her. "They arrived 2 hours ago," she explained, her voice breaking. "Nathan, Amber, and her parents. They brought some beers, started making toasts. I thought it was a normal visit, that they wanted to spend time with us for the holidays. But then, she stopped when we heard footsteps approaching the door. I quickly stood up and moved to one side, partially hidden by the porch column. The door opened completely, and Nathan appeared. At 35, our son looked a lot like me. But there was something in his eyes I never liked, something that became more noticeable when he met Amber and her family. "Mom, stop making this difficult," he said, not noticing my presence. "We just need you to sign the transfer and the power of attorney, and we'll all be calmer. The house will be safe with us, not with you two who are already old." I froze when I heard those words. Transfer? Power of attorney? Our house? What transfer? Nathan? I asked, stepping out from my hiding place. My son was so startled he almost lost his balance. His face went from red to white in a second. Dad, no, I didn't know you were here, he stammered, looking nervously back into the house. How long have you been here? Long enough, I replied, feeling my blood begin to boil. What is this about a transfer and a power of attorney? What are you asking your mother to sign? Before Nathan could answer, Amber appeared behind him, an attractive woman but with a smile that never reached her eyes. Mr. Arthur, what a pleasant surprise, she exclaimed with false joy. We were just talking about you. Behind her, two more figures appeared, Mr. Harold Ledesma and Mrs. Miriam. He was a bulky man, with a neatly trimmed mustache and expensive clothes. She was a thin woman, with dyed blonde hair, loaded with jewelry that looked too heavy for her neck. Mr. Arthur, a pleasure to see you, said Mr. Harold, extending his hand to me. I didn't take it. Instead, I stared hard at my son. Nathan, I asked you a question. What papers are you asking your mother to sign? My son exchanged a quick glance with his father-in-law before answering. Dad, it's not a big deal. We just wanted to secure the family's future, he said, trying to sound reasonable. With your job as a driver and your age, we're worried you might lose the house if something happens to you. If you put it in our name. In your name? I interrupted, feeling short of breath. This house? The one I built brick by brick with my own hands? The one your mother and I paid for with 40 years of hard work? Mr. Arthur, I think you're misinterpreting the situation, Mr. Harold intervened, with a condescending tone that made me clench my fists. We just want to protect the family assets. My son-in-law and I know influential people who can ensure everything is in order. In order? I repeated, trying to stay calm. This house is already in order. I have the deed. All the papers are up to date. I don't need anyone to protect it. Dad, you're being stubborn, Nathan said, and I noticed he had been drinking from the brightness in his eyes and the slight wobble in his stance. You're not young enough to be driving all day. What will happen when you can't work anymore? How will you keep the house? I felt Helen's hand on my arm, squeezing it gently, silently asking me not to lose my temper. Your mother and I have planned our retirement for years, I replied as calmly as I could. We have our savings, my pension, and the house is completely paid off. We don't need anyone to help us with what's ours. Mr. Arthur. Mrs. Miriam chimed in, with a smile that was meant to be motherly. We just want what's best for everyone. Imagine if you put the house in Nathan and Amber's name. You could continue to live here without worrying about anything. They would take care of everything, the taxes, the maintenance, and you would just have to enjoy your old age in peace, Amber completed, looking at my wife. Mrs. Helen, you understood perfectly just a few minutes ago. Why are you hesitating now? I saw my wife look down, ashamed, and I felt something break inside me. They had been pressuring her, maybe for hours, taking advantage of her being alone. Nobody is signing anything, I said firmly, placing myself between them and my wife. And I'm going to ask you to leave my house right now, Mr. Harold's friendly expression changed to one of barely contained disgust. I think you're making a mistake, Mr. Arthur. We just want to help. If you want to help, I replied, looking him straight in the eye, you can start by respecting our decisions and our property. Nathan took a step toward me, his face flushed with anger or alcohol, or both. Dad, you're ruining everything, he claimed. Mr. Harold can help us. He knows a lot of important people. If the house is in our name, we can even get a loan to expand it, so we can all live better. So that was it. They wanted to use our house, our only asset, as collateral for their business or their debts. Nathan, look at me, I said, controlling my voice. This house is not for sale. It's not for loan, and it's not being put in anyone's name but your mother's and mine. And now, please, you and your guests, leave. There was a tense moment where no one said anything. Then, Mr. Harold let out a short, dry laugh. Let's go. Family? It seems Mr. Arthur needs time to think things over more calmly, he said, gesturing toward the door. We'll talk another day, when he's more receptive. Amber took Nathan by the arm, who was looking at me with a mixture of rage and shame. Dad, you're making a mistake, he told me. We just want to help you. If you want to help us, I replied. Start by respecting your parents and what we've built. The four of them went inside to get their things. I took that moment to speak quietly with Helen. Did they pressure you a lot? Did you sign anything? I asked worriedly. She shook her head. No, but they were so insistent. They told me it was for the best, that we would be protected if something happened to you. Her voice broke. Forgive me, Arthur. For a moment, I almost believed them. I held her tightly, feeling her fragile body against mine. In that instant, I swore that no one would ever make her cry like that again, not even our own son. A few minutes later, the four of them came out of the house. Mr. Harold gave me a look that was meant to be friendly, but hid something darker. Think about it. Mr. Arthur, the offer still stands. We just want what's best for everyone, he said, extending his hand again. Again. I didn't take it. Thank you for your concern, I replied dryly. But my wife and I know perfectly well how to manage our own affairs. When they finally left, Nathan paused for a moment before getting into his truck. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry if I made you feel bad, he said. But he didn't sound truly sorry. I was just thinking about everyone's future. Nathan. Son, I said, suddenly feeling tired. Your mother and I decide our future, and I hope you never try something like this again. He nodded, but I saw in his eyes that this wasn't over. As I watched them drive away, a sense of unease settled in my chest. Something told me this was just the first battle of a war I hadn't asked for, but that I was willing to fight to the end. Helen took my hand, and we went into our house together. On the kitchen table were the half-finished beer bottles, and some papers that I hadn't seen clearly. I picked them up, and my heart skipped a beat. They were drafts of a power of attorney and a property transfer, already on a notary's letterhead. They had this all planned, I murmured, showing the papers to my wife. She looked at them in horror and then hugged me tightly. Arthur, I'm scared, she confessed. The way they talk to us, as if we were two useless old people who can't decide for ourselves anymore. I held her and kissed her forehead, but my mind was already working. I needed to act fast to protect what had cost us so much to build. I needed a plan. Don't worry. My love, I said with a confidence I didn't fully feel. I won't let anyone take what's ours. I promise you. As I held her, I looked around our small living room. Every corner of this house held a story, a memory, a piece of our lives. And I suddenly understood that what was at stake was much more than just walls and a roof. It was our dignity, our life's work, our right to decide what belonged to us. That night, while Helen slept uneasily beside me, I lay awake planning my next steps. I didn't know exactly what Nathan and the Ledesmas had in mind, but I was sure they wouldn't give up so easily. And neither would I. I remembered an old friend, Captain Arriaga, who now worked for the city police. And I also thought of Jessica Castaneda, a young lawyer who had helped a fellow driver with a similar problem. I would contact them first thing in the morning. This war was just beginning, and I had no intention of losing it. I barely slept that night. While Helen breathed restlessly beside me, my head wouldn't stop spinning, replaying what had happened over and over. The image of my son toasting with his in-laws while my wife cried outside burned inside me like acid. I got up before dawn and made coffee. With the hot cup in my hands, sitting at our small kitchen table, I picked up my cell phone and called Roger. Arthur? He answered, his voice sleepy. What's wrong? It's barely 5. I need a favor. My friend, can you cover for me today? I have to take care of some urgent business. Of course. Arthur, he said after a brief silence. Is everything okay with Mrs. Helen? I'll tell you later, I replied, not wanting to go into detail. I owe you one, Roger. After hanging up, I felt Helen's hands on my shoulders. I hadn't heard her get up. "Where are you going so early?" she asked, pouring herself some coffee. "To make sure no one takes what's ours," I replied, taking her hand. "Trust me, my love." Helen looked at me intently, with those eyes that, after 42 years, still made me feel like she could read my every thought. "Be careful, Arthur," she said finally. "I know that look of yours." I smiled at her, though inside I felt a mix of anger and determination I hadn't felt in many years. "I'm always careful," I assured her, getting up to give her a kiss. "But this time, I'm not going to stand by and do nothing." My first stop was the municipal police station. The building, a single story with peeling paint, was just beginning to show signs of life when I arrived. A couple of young officers were getting off their shift, their eyes red from the night watch. "Mr. Arthur?" I heard a familiar voice behind me. I turned around and there was Captain Arriaga. We had grown up together in the same neighborhood, though our paths diverged when he entered the police academy and I went into construction. Life brought us back together years later, when our kids were in the same school. "Martin, good to see you," I said, shaking his hand. "What brings you here so early?" he asked, motioning toward his office. "Come on in." I just made coffee. Once inside, I told him everything that had happened the day before. His face hardened as my story unfolded. "I know the Ledesmas," he said finally, leaning back in his chair. "Mr. Harold acts like a big-shot businessman, but he has a reputation for taking advantage of people. And what you're telling me about Nathan," he paused. "Sorry to say it, Arthur, but your son has always looked for the easy way out." I wasn't offended. Martin was just telling the truth. What can I do? "Martin? I'm afraid they'll come back and pressure Helen when I'm not here." Captain Arriaga rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Legally, I can't do much if they haven't committed a crime," he admitted. "But I can send patrols to cruise by your house more often. And if they try anything, you call me immediately." I thanked him, but I knew I needed more than that. I needed legal protection. "Do you know a lawyer named Jessica Castañeda?" I asked. "Mrs. Castañeda? Sure, she's good. Helped several colleagues with property and inheritance problems. Her office is near the market." After saying goodbye to Martin, I headed straight for the lawyer's office. To my surprise, despite the early hour, the lights were on. I knocked on the frosted glass door, and a young voice invited me in. Jessica Castañeda turned out to be a much younger woman than I expected, probably in her 30s. She wore a simple but formal suit, and her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her eyes, behind thin-framed glasses, studied me with curiosity. "How can I help you?" she asked, pointing to a chair in front of her desk. I told her my situation, without leaving out any details. She listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes in a legal pad. When I finished, she took off her glasses and sighed. "Mr. Arthur, what you're describing is, unfortunately, very common," she said. "Children or relatives pressuring seniors to transfer their assets, sometimes with deception, sometimes with veiled threats. What can I do to protect us?" "Several things," she replied, putting her glasses back on. "First, we need to review your paperwork. Do you have a will?" "I made one about 10 years ago," I admitted. "Nathan is our only son, so we left him as the sole heir." "We need to change that immediately," she said firmly. "And we need to revoke any power of attorney your son might have." "Power of attorney? We haven't given him any power of attorney." The lawyer looked at me intently. "Are you completely sure?" "Sometimes. These documents are signed without fully understanding their implications. Your wife might have signed something without your knowledge." A chill ran down my spine. Helen had told me she didn't sign anything yesterday. But what about before? "I don't know for sure," I admitted. "I need to check." "Let's do this," Jessica proposed, picking up her phone. "I know all the notaries in town. I'll ask them to verify if there's any power of attorney in your son's or daughter-in-law's name. In the meantime, let's prepare a revocation of any existing power of attorney and a new will for the next 2 hours." Jessica drafted several documents while I provided her with all the necessary information about our assets. besides the house. We had some modest savings and a small plot of land on the outskirts that we bought years ago for retirement. Mr. Arthur, I recommend putting the house in a trust, she told me as she finished typing. It's a legal structure that will protect the property even after you're gone, ensuring your wife can continue to live there for life. And after that? After, you can establish who inherits, under what conditions, or even donate it to a cause you both value. The important thing is that no one can pressure you to transfer it now. The phone rang, interrupting us. Jessica answered, and her expression turned serious as she listened. When she hung up, she looked at me gravely. We have a problem. Mr. Arthur, according to Mr. Lopez, the notary, a general power of attorney was registered 6 months ago in favor of your son Nathan, signed by Mrs. Helen. I felt the floor move beneath my feet. That's impossible, I protested. Helen would never do that without consulting me. The notary says the signature looks authentic. But, she paused. Mr. Arthur, does your wife sign all her own documents? Or do you sometimes sign for her? The question caught me off guard, but I understood its implication. Sometimes I sign for her. Yes, I admitted. Routine documents. When she's busy or not feeling well. We have very similar signatures. Jessica nodded, as if confirming a suspicion. Is it possible someone forged her signature? Or that they had her sign something making her believe it was another document? She said. In any case, we are going to revoke that power of attorney immediately and file a complaint for possible forgery. We spent the rest of the morning going from one notary's office to another, formalizing the revocation of the power of attorney and establishing the trust for our house. We also changed the will, stating clearly that any attempt at coercion or manipulation would automatically disqualify Nathan as an heir. It was almost noon when we finished, before saying goodbye. Jessica gave me one last piece of advice. Mr. Arthur, you need to get proof of what your son and the Ledesmas are trying to do. If they pressure you again, record the conversation. We're in a one-party consent state, which means only one person needs to consent for the recording to be legal, and that person can be you. She showed me how to set up the recording app on my cell phone and how to activate it discreetly. Then she handed me a folder with copies of all the documents we had processed. Keep these in a safe place. And always carry a copy with you when you leave the house, she recommended. And if you need anything, call me anytime. I left the office feeling stronger, but also sadder. I never imagined I would have to legally protect myself from my own son. As I drove back home, my cell phone rang. It was Helen. Arthur. Nathan just called, she said, her voice tense. He says he's coming over with Mr. Harold, that they have something important to show us. Don't open the door for them, I instructed her. I'm on my way now. I already told them I'm not alone. That Mr. Sal is here fixing the lock. I smiled despite the situation. My wife had been clever enough to invent a lie to keep them at bay. Mr. Sal was the neighborhood locksmith, a burly man respected by everyone, well thought. My love, I'll be there in 10 minutes. I sped up as much as I could without breaking the traffic laws. When I got home, I saw Nathan's truck parked in front of our door, and next to it, Mr. Harold's black Honda Civic. I felt my pulse quicken as I parked my car. Before getting out, I remembered Jessica's advice and activated the recording app on my cell phone. I put it in my shirt pocket, making sure the microphone wasn't blocked. When I entered the house, I found a tense scene. Helen was standing by the kitchen, clearly uncomfortable. Nathan and Mr. Harold were sitting at the table, with several papers spread out in front of them. There was no sign of Amber or Mrs. Miriam. Dad, good thing you're here, Nathan said, standing up. I was just explaining to Mom that we're worried about you. Worried? I asked, walking over to Helen and taking her hand. About what, exactly? Mr. Harold cleared his throat. Mr. Arthur, I think you misunderstood us yesterday. We don't want to take anything from you. On the contrary, we want to protect you. Protect us from what? I insisted. Nathan exchanged a look with Mr. Harold before answering. Dad, you don't know this, but there are people who take advantage of the elderly. Scammers. Abusive neighbors. He paused dramatically. Even the government can seize properties if they aren't properly protected legally. It was such a blatant lie I almost laughed. But I held back. I wanted to see how far they would go. And how exactly are you going to protect us? Mr. Harold pushed some papers toward me. It's very simple. If the house is in the name of a corporation that we control, no one can touch it. You will continue to live here, of course, but legally, you will be safer. I took the papers and glanced over them. It was a sales contract disguised as asset protection, with clauses so abusive they would make a loan shark blush. And you prepared this, Mr. Harold? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. A lawyer friend of mine, he replied proudly. He's very good. He manages the assets of several important families in our state. I see, I said, leaving the papers on the table. And my son agrees with this? Completely. Dad, Nathan chimed in. It's for the good of everyone. Besides, Mr. Harold has offered me a position in his company if we finalize this arrangement. An important position with a good salary. So there it was. The real reason my son was willing to strip us of our home. A job with his father-in-law. Probably the first one he would ever have to actually work hard at. Nathan, son, I said, measuring each word. How long have you been out of work? His face darkened. I'm not out of work, Dad. I'm between jobs. Besides, I've been helping Mr. Harold with some business. What business? Exactly, I pressed. Mr. Harold intervened before Nathan could answer. Real estate projects, mainly, he said vaguely. There's a lot of potential in this town, especially in areas like this, that are starting to increase in value. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. They didn't just want our house. They were probably planning to eventually sell it to developers, taking advantage of the fact that our neighborhood was starting to attract tourists and outside buyers. I understand perfectly, I said, surprising them with my conciliatory tone. You're right. We have to protect the family assets. I saw a flash of triumph in Mr. Harold's eyes, and Nathan visibly relaxed. I'm glad you understand, Dad, my son said, smiling for the first time. Of course, I continued. In fact, I just came from doing exactly that, legally protecting what's ours. I showed them the folder Jessica had given me and took out some of the documents. This morning, Helen and I put our house into an irrevocable trust, I explained. And we also revoked the power of attorney that my wife supposedly gave to Nathan 6 months ago. Nathan's smile vanished and Mr. Harold stiffened. What have you done? My son asked, incredulous. What I had to do. Protect what's ours, I replied firmly. Oh, and by the way, we also filed a complaint for possible signature forgery. Miss Castaneda is handling everything. Mr. Harold stood up abruptly, gathering his papers. I don't think you're thinking clearly. Mr. Arthur, he said, trying to maintain his friendly tone, but with a note of threat in his voice. We could have reached an agreement beneficial to everyone. There is no agreement that involves taking our house that could be beneficial to everyone, I replied. And now I'm going to ask you to leave my property. Nathan looked at me with a mix of anger and surprise. Dad, you're making a serious mistake. Mr. Harold is just trying to help us. No. Nathan, you're the one making the mistake, I told him, feeling a deep sadness. And I hope one day you realize it. This isn't over, Mr. Harold threatened as he headed for the door. I have friends everywhere, and your little lawyer is going to find that out soon. Your threats are recorded. Mr. Harold, I informed him, taking my cell phone out of my pocket, just like this entire conversation. Miss Castaneda suggested I gather evidence, and that's exactly what I've done. Mr. Harold turned pale, and Nathan was dumbfounded. We'll see you in court if necessary, I added, but I assure you, you will not succeed in taking away what we've built with so much effort. Without another word, Mr. Harold left the house. Nathan stayed for a moment, looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. I never thought you would distrust me like this, he said finally. I'm your son, and precisely because you are my son. It hurts me what you're doing, I replied, but I'm not going to allow it. Nathan, for your own good and for ours, When they finally left, Helen came over and hugged me tightly. "Arthur, I was so scared," she murmured against my chest. "When they called, I thought they were coming with papers I had signed without realizing it, or, 'Everything is fine now, my love,' I reassured her. 'They can't do anything to us.' But as I held her, I looked out the window and saw Nathan and Mr. Harold talking heatedly next to their vehicles. My son was gesturing angrily, and his father-in-law seemed to be giving him instructions. I was certain that this wasn't over. It was just beginning. That night I called Mr. Sal, the neighborhood locksmith. I had known him for years. We had worked together on several construction sites when I was still a mason. He was a burly man, with large, rough hands from work, but with the precision of a surgeon when it came to locks. "Change all the locks, right now?" he asked, surprised, when I explained what I needed. "Yes, Sal. It's urgent." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "Problems with the kid?" he finally asked. I wasn't surprised he guessed. In neighborhoods like ours, rumors spread faster than water in a rainstorm. "Something like that," I admitted. "I'll explain when you get here." An hour later, Mr. Sal was at our door with his toolbox. While he worked on the main lock, I told him what had happened, omitting only the most painful details. "It's not the first case I've seen. Mr. Arthur," he commented as he dismantled the door's mechanism. "Last month I changed the locks for Mrs. Herman because her nephew stole her pension twice. And what happened? Well, the kid came in a rage, threatening to break down the door. I had to call the police." He paused to adjust a piece. "He hasn't been back since. I think he lives in the next town over now." While Mr. Sal continued to work, Helen made coffee. When we sat at the small kitchen table, she gripped my hand tightly. "Arthur, do you think Nathan will try to force his way in?" she asked. Worry etched on her face. Before I could answer, Mr. Sal spoke up from the doorway. "Don't you worry, Mrs. Helen. These new locks are impossible to force, and besides," he pulled what looked like small, lighter-sized cameras from his pocket. "I'm going to install these at the entrance and in the backyard. They're security cameras that connect to your cell phone. If anyone tries to get in, it sends you an alert." "Where did you get those, Sal?" I asked, surprised. "A buddy of mine imports them. They're good and not too expensive." "I'll leave them as part of the job," I accepted gratefully. Any extra security measure was welcome. Mr. Sal finished around 10 at night. Before leaving, he handed me 3 new sets of keys, one for each of you, and keep the third one well hidden, just in case, he recommended. "And, Mr. Arthur, if you need anything else, anything at all, just call me." I paid him what we agreed on, plus extra for the urgency and the cameras. When he left, Helen and I sat in the living room, each lost in our own thoughts. "Do you really think Nathan would try to enter without permission?" my wife finally asked, her voice breaking. I sighed deeply. It pained me to even consider the possibility. But after what I had seen, I could no longer trust our son. "I don't know, my love," I answered honestly, "but it's better to be safe." That night, while Helen slept restlessly beside me, I reviewed the recording I had made of the conversation with Nathan and Mr. Harold over and over. I emailed it to Jessica Castaneda, and also saved it to the cloud, just as she had taught me. The next day, I decided to go to work as usual. We needed to maintain our routine so as not to arouse more suspicion. Besides, I needed the money. If life had taught me anything, it was that legal battles, even just ones, always cost money. It was a quiet day at work. I picked up several tourists from the airport, took a family to the main beach, and ended the day with a long trip to the next town over. By the time I got back to our town, it was already getting dark. As I approached home, I noticed something strange. There were 2 vehicles I didn't recognize parked nearby. They were neither Nathan's truck nor Mr. Harold's Honda Civic, but a white Volkswagen and a red Jeep. A chill ran down my spine. I parked half a block away and approached cautiously. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a notification from the cameras Mr. Sal had installed. There was movement at the front door. I opened the app and what I saw froze my blood. Amber, Nathan's wife, was at our door, banging insistently. Next to her were a man and a woman I didn't recognize. The woman was carrying a briefcase that looked like it held documents. I quickly called home. Helen answered on the second ring. "Arthur? Where are you?" she asked, her voice anxious. "I'm near the house. I see Amber is at the door with more people." "Who are they?" "She says it's a social worker and a doctor, that they're here to evaluate her voice broke, our mental capacity to handle our affairs. She says Nathan is worried about us." Rage washed over me. So that was their new strategy. Try to declare us incompetent. Don't open the door for them. No matter what, I told her firmly. And call Miss Castañeda right now. The number is in the notebook by the phone. Tell her exactly what's happening. I already did. Arthur. She told me not to let them in and that she's on her way. I smiled despite the situation. My Helen had always been quicker and smarter than people assumed. Well done, my love. I'm going to call Captain Arriaga, too. I'll be there in 5 minutes. I hung up and immediately dialed Martin's number. To my relief, he answered right away. Arthur, is everything okay? Martin, there are people at my house trying to force their way in. They claim to be a social worker and a doctor. But they don't have an appointment, and we didn't call them. I think my son is behind this. I'm on my way right now, he said without hesitation. Don't do anything until I get there. But I couldn't just wait. I moved closer, close enough to see what was happening, staying hidden behind a tree on the corner. Amber was still banging on the door, harder each time. Mrs. Helen. We know you're in there, she shouted. We just want to help you. If you don't open up, we'll have to call the authorities. It was then I noticed the man was filming everything with his cell phone. They were creating evidence that we weren't cooperating, probably to use against us later. I couldn't hold back any longer. I stepped out from my hiding place and approached with firm steps. Can someone tell me what you're doing on my property? I asked, my voice loud and clear. The three of them turned, surprised. Amber recovered quickly and put on her best fake smile. Mr. Arthur, good thing you're here. I'd like you to meet Miss Monica Vega, a social worker, and Dr. Ramirez. They're here to do a routine evaluation. Routine evaluation? I repeated, incredulous. Ordered by whom? Because neither my wife nor I have requested such a thing. The supposed social worker took a step forward. She was a woman in her 40s, with a formal suit and a serious expression that seemed rehearsed. Mr. Arthur, your son Nathan has expressed concern for your well-being. As part of the protocol, we must conduct an evaluation to ensure that. What government agency are you from? I interrupted, noticing she wasn't wearing any visible identification. The woman seemed taken aback for a moment. We work with a private assistance program, she replied vaguely. Your son hired us to. Then you have no legal authority to be here, I concluded. I'm going to ask you to leave my property immediately. The supposed doctor intervened then. Mr. Arthur, we understand your concern, but it's for your own good. We just want to verify that both you and your wife are in a condition to manage your affairs. It's standard procedure for people your age. Indignation was consuming me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I didn't want to give them material they could use against me. Doctor, what did you say your name was? I asked. Ramirez. Dr. Philip Ramirez, he replied, though I detected some uncertainty in his voice. And your medical license, Dr. Ramirez. I'd like to see it, if you don't mind. The man became visibly nervous. I have it in the car. I could. That won't be necessary, a firm voice interrupted from behind me. I turned to see Jessica Castañeda approaching with purpose, followed closely by Captain Arriaga and another police officer. Miss Vega, Dr. Ramirez, Jessica said, in a tone that made it clear she knew their identities. I'm afraid you are committing several crimes, including impersonating public officials and harassment. The fake social worker lost all her composure. We were just. Save the explanations, Jessica cut her off. You can give them at the station when you present your professional credentials. Which By the way, I highly doubt you have. Captain Arriaga approached the three visitors. I'm going to need you to accompany me to verify your identities, he said with authority. And I'm going to have to temporarily confiscate that phone you were recording with without consent. Amber looked like she was about to protest, but something in Martin's expression made her change her mind. The three of them followed the officers to the patrol car parked on the corner. Jessica walked over to me. Mr. Arthur, this is exactly what I warned you about. They are looking for any way to declare you incompetent to manage your assets. Who are those people? Really? I asked, watching the three get into the patrol car. The woman works for a law firm known for shady inheritance cases. The man, I'm not sure, but I doubt he's a doctor. And as for your daughter-in-law, she knows exactly what she's doing. I completed. Jessica nodded gravely. Mr. Arthur, this is going to escalate. We have to get ahead of their next moves. We went into the house, where Helen was waiting for us, visibly shaken but firm. After making sure she was okay, we sat in the living room to discuss the next steps. What they tried today is just the beginning, Jessica explained. They will surely try again, maybe with real officials next time. We need to legally establish that you are in full possession of your mental faculties. How do we do that? Helen asked. First thing tomorrow. I'll take you to a geriatric doctor and a forensic psychologist for evaluations, Jessica replied. These reports will be crucial if they try to question your capacity in court. I nodded, understanding the strategy. And what about the forged power of attorney? I asked. I've already filed the formal complaint. Mr. Lopez, the notary, is cooperating. He says he vaguely remembers Mrs. Helen, but admits he didn't verify her identity with the required rigor. That gives us a good case to nullify the document. Then, Jessica took some papers from her briefcase and spread them on the table, in addition to the trust we've already established. I recommend we do this, she pointed to a legal document. It's an advance directive. Basically, you designate someone you trust to make decisions for you in the event you truly do lose capacity in the future. This way, you ensure that, no matter what, Nathan or the Ledesmas cannot control your affairs. And who could we designate? Helen asked, her voice breaking. Nathan is our only son. The question hung in the air, heavy and painful. It was true, other than Nathan. We had no close relatives who could take on that role. Think of trusted friends. People who have proven their loyalty over the years, Jessica suggested. I immediately thought of Roger, my fellow driver. We had known each other for over 15 years, and he had always been like a brother to me, but I wasn't sure if he would accept such a responsibility. I have someone in mind, I said finally, but I need to talk to him first. Jessica nodded sympathetically. There's no rush for this document. The important thing now is to focus on the medical evaluations and strengthening our legal position. When Jessica left, Helen and I sat in silence. Finally, my wife spoke. Arthur, I never thought it would come to this, she said, with tears in her eyes. Legally protecting ourselves from our own son. I held her tightly, feeling her pain as if it were my own. Because it was. Me neither, my love, I admitted. But we have no choice. Nathan has made his decision, and we have to protect ourselves. How did we get here? She wondered aloud. We raised him as best we could. We gave him values and education. It's not your fault or mine, I assured her, though deep down I wondered if we had failed somewhere. Nathan chose his path when he met the Ledesmas. They changed him. Or maybe they just brought something to the surface that was already there, Helen murmured. I had no answer for that. I could only hold her tighter as the evening shadows lengthened in our small living room. The next day, just as Jessica had planned, we went to see the geriatrician and the forensic psychologist. Both professionals were thorough in their evaluations, asking us questions about our daily lives, our finances, our memory, and our ability to make decisions. To my relief, both concluded that we were in perfect mental condition to manage our affairs. It's clear that you are both not only lucid, but perfectly capable of understanding complex situations and making informed decisions, the psychologist, a kind-looking older man, told us. I will include that in my report. On the way home, I stopped at the spot where we rideshare drivers used to gather between trips. I needed to talk to Roger. I found him drinking coffee, leaning against his car, waiting for a new ride request. "Arthur," he greeted me with a smile. "How's everything going? Did you resolve your issue?" "More or less," I replied, sitting next to him on a cement bench. "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about." I told him everything that had happened, from the initial scene with Nathan and his in-laws to the forced evaluation attempt the day before. Roger listened intently, his expression changing from surprise to outrage. "I can't believe it. Arthur," he said when I finished my story, "your own son doing this? For a house?" "It's not just the house, Roger. It's the easy money. It's the control." I sighed deeply. "The fact is, I need to ask you something important." I explained about the advance directive and what it entailed. To my surprise, Roger didn't hesitate for a second. "Of course I'll accept, Arthur. It would be an honor for you to trust me with something like that. You and Mrs. Helen have been like family to me ever since my wife passed away." I felt a lump in my throat. The loyalty of a true friend in times like these was invaluable. "Thank you, Roger. You don't know what this means to us." We talked for a while longer, and then I returned home with a mix of contradictory emotions. On one hand, the deep sadness of being at war with my own son. On the other, gratitude for having people like Jessica, Martin, and Roger who were willing to help us in these dark times. When I got home, I found Helen in the kitchen, preparing lunch. There was something different about her, a new determination I hadn't seen in days. "How did it go with Roger?" she asked, as she chopped vegetables with precision. "He accepted without hesitation," I replied, washing my hands in the sink. "He says it's an honor for him." Helen nodded, as if she had never doubted the answer. "Good. Then tomorrow we'll call the lawyer to prepare the document," she said firmly. "And Arthur, I've been thinking, maybe we should consider changing the locks on the plot of land too." I was surprised by her suggestion, but she was right. The small plot of land we had bought on the outskirts for our retirement could also be in Nathan and the Ledesmas' sights. "You're right," I agreed. "I'll call Mr. Sal to take care of that too. And one more thing," Helen continued, setting the knife aside and looking at me directly. "I want to learn how to use the cell phone better, how to use those security apps, how to record conversations, all of it. I don't want to always depend on you to protect us." Her determination filled me with pride and love. My Helen, always stronger than people assumed. "I'll teach you everything I know," I promised, hugging her. "And what I don't know, we'll learn together." That afternoon, as I showed her how to use the different security apps on her phone, I felt something changing within us. The pain of Nathan's betrayal was still there, sharp and deep, but alongside it, a fierce determination was growing. Not to let ourselves be beaten, to protect what we had worked so hard to build throughout our lives. We knew the battle was just beginning. Nathan and the Ledesmas surely had more tricks up their sleeves, but we were no longer unprepared. We were armed with legal knowledge, with evidence, with faithful allies, and, above all, with the certainty that what we were defending was just and ours. Night was falling when I received a message from Miss Jessica. It was a notification that the court had accepted our complaint for signature forgery and that a formal investigation would soon begin. It was a small victory, but it gave us hope. As I watched Helen practicing with her cell phone, I smiled to myself. The Ledesmas and Nathan thought we were two helpless old people, easy to manipulate and deceive. How wrong they were. They had barely seen what we were capable of. The following weeks passed in a tense calm. We heard nothing from Nathan or the Ledesmas, which, far from reassuring us, kept us in a constant state of alert. As Captain Arriaga told me, when your enemy is quiet, that's when you should be most worried. We continued with our daily routine. I left early for work, picking up passengers at the airport or taking tourists to the beaches. Helen continued with her usual activities. But now she always carried her cell phone with her, recording any suspicious interaction, just as I had taught her. One afternoon, While waiting for passengers at the airport, I received a call from Jessica Castaneda. "Mr. Arthur, we have news," she said, getting straight to the point. "The notary, Mr. Lopez, has formally admitted that the signature on the power of attorney was not properly verified. Furthermore, we've gotten a handwriting expert to confirm that it does not match Mrs. Helen's authentic signature." I felt immense relief wash over me. "So, the power of attorney is definitively nullified?" "Exactly. And there's more," Jessica continued. "The forgery complaint is moving forward. The judge has summoned Nathan to testify next week. That was good news, but also worrying. If Nathan was legally cornered, what would he try now?" "Do you think they'll try something else?" I asked. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "Mr. Arthur, people like the Ledesmas don't give up easily," she replied cautiously. "They've invested time and resources in this. They are probably planning their next move." After hanging up, I called Helen to tell her the news. To my surprise, she didn't answer. That wasn't like her, especially now that she was so vigilant with her phone. I called again. Nothing. A feeling of alarm began to grow inside me. I canceled the ride I was waiting for and drove at full speed toward home. During the drive, I tried calling her several more times, but she still didn't answer. I also called Mr. Sal, Roger, even Captain Arriaga, but none of them had seen Helen that day. As I turned onto our street, I saw something that froze my blood. Nathan's truck was parked in front of our house, and next to it, another vehicle I didn't recognize. I parked at a distance and approached cautiously. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was an alert from the security cameras. I opened the app and saw images of Nathan, Amber, and another person I didn't know entering our house. Helen was with them, but something didn't seem right about her. She was moving slowly. I immediately called Captain Arriaga. "Martin, they're in my house. Nathan and other people. Something's not right with Helen." "I'm on my way," he responded without hesitation. "Don't go in alone. Arthur, wait for me." But I couldn't just wait. My wife could be in danger. I moved toward the house, my heart pounding. Before reaching the door, I decided to check the side window first, where I could see part of the living room without being seen. What I witnessed left me frozen. Helen was sitting on the sofa, with a lost look in her eyes, while a man in a white coat took her blood pressure. Amber was filming everything with her cell phone, and Nathan was talking animatedly, as if explaining something. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but it was clear they were creating some kind of evidence about Helen's health. Rage flooded me as I saw how my wife seemed unable to defend herself. Had they given her something? Was she medicated against her will? I couldn't wait any longer. I took my cell phone, activated the video recording, and headed for the front door. To my surprise, it wasn't locked. I entered quietly. "As you can see," Nathan was saying to the camera Amber was holding, "my mother is in no condition to make important decisions. She needs constant supervision and—" "What the hell is going on in here?" I interrupted, my voice shaking with fury. The three of them spun around, surprised by my entrance. The man in the white coat turned pale and moved away from Helen. My wife, upon seeing me, tried to stand up, but seemed disoriented. "Dad," Nathan said, quickly recovering from the surprise. "We weren't expecting you so early. We're doing a medical evaluation on Mom. She's been very confused lately." "Confused?" I repeated, approaching Helen and taking her hand. It was cold and trembling slightly. "What have you done to her?" "Nothing." Mr. Arthur, the man in the white coat, intervened, visibly nervous. "I just gave her a mild sedative to calm her anxiety. She was very agitated when we arrived." "A sedative? Without her consent?" My voice rose dangerously. "And who are you? A real doctor this time?" The man stammered something unintelligible, while Amber continued to film the entire scene. "Turn off that camera," I ordered her. "What you are doing is illegal." "It's for everyone's protection," she replied, without stopping the recording, "to document Mrs. Helen's condition." At that moment, Helen spoke, her voice weak but clear. "They tricked me. Arthur," she said, squeezing my hand. They said they were bringing news about you, that you had been in an accident. When I opened the door, they forced me to take some pills. Rage blinded me for an instant. I advanced on Nathan, who instinctively recoiled. "Do you realize what you've done?" I said, restraining myself from losing my temper. "This is assault. It's elder abuse. It's breaking and entering." "We're just trying to help," Nathan insisted, though his voice no longer sounded so confident. "Mom needs attention. You don't see how she is because you're out all day, working." "Enough," I cut him off. "I want all three of you out of my house right now. And you," I turned to the supposed doctor. "Tell me exactly what you gave my wife." The man, growing more nervous, took a bottle of pills from his pocket. "It's just a mild anti-anxiety pill. It won't cause any harm. The effect will wear off in a few hours." I took the bottle and pocketed it. It would be important evidence. "Out of my house. Now," I repeated. But Nathan didn't move. "We're not leaving. We're going to wait for the competent authorities to arrive to assess the situation." "What authorities?" I asked, feeling a chill. "We called social services before we came," he explained with a triumphant smile. "We explained our concern about the mental state of you two. They should be here any minute." So that was their play. Create a crisis situation so the authorities would find them helping supposedly incapacitated parents. I was about to answer when I heard vehicles parking in front of the house. For a moment, I feared it really was social services. But then I saw Captain Arriaga's patrol car out the window, and next to it, another vehicle from which Jessica Castaneda was getting out. "It looks like your authorities just arrived," I told Nathan, feeling immense relief. A minute later, Captain Arriaga entered the house, followed by another officer and Jessica. The lawyer immediately ran to Helen. "Mrs. Helen, are you all right?" she asked, kneeling in front of her. "They gave me something. I feel dizzy," my wife replied. Jessica turned to the man in the white coat, who now looked like he wanted to disappear. "Did you administer medication to her without her consent?" she asked in a sharp tone. "Are you aware that constitutes a serious crime?" Meanwhile, Captain Arriaga approached Nathan and Amber. "I'm going to have to ask you to come with me to the station to make some statements," he said with authority. "There are several potential crimes here: breaking and entering, administering substances without consent, impersonating an authority." "We haven't impersonated anyone," Amber protested. "We're just helping elderly people who clearly can't take care of themselves." "Elderly people who can't take care of themselves?" Jessica repeated, standing up. "I have medical and psychological reports in my briefcase from 2 weeks ago certifying that both Mr. Arthur and Mrs. Helen are in perfect mental condition. Reports prepared by accredited professionals." "Not by." She looked disdainfully at the man in the white coat. "Unidentified individuals who drug people against their will. The fake doctor, seeing the situation getting worse for them, decided to confess. "I didn't want to be part of this," he said, his voice trembling. "They paid me to play this part, to pretend I was a doctor and say the lady was confused. I'm not a doctor. I'm an actor. I work in local commercials." Nathan looked at him with fury. "Shut up, you idiot," he shouted. But it was too late. The man, scared, kept talking. "They gave me a script. They told me exactly what to say, what to do. They promised me there would be no legal consequences, that it was just a family intervention." Captain Arriaga took out his handcuffs. "All of you are coming with me to make a statement. Then we'll decide on the charges." It was then that Nathan, seeing himself cornered, completely changed his attitude. His face transformed, showing a desperation I had never seen in him. "Dad, please," he pleaded, approaching me. "You have to understand. Mr. Harold got me into this. He told me if we didn't get the house, he would fire me, take everything from me. I owe him a lot of money. Dad, I'm desperate." I looked at him with a mixture of sadness and disappointment. "And your solution was to try and take away the only thing we have? To drug your mother? To try and declare us incompetent? I didn't think it would go this far," he said, with tears in his eyes. "Mr. Harold kept pressuring me. He said if I didn't get the house, he would make my life impossible, that he knows people." that he can ruin me. Nathan, Captain Arriaga interrupted him. You can declare all of that formally at the station. Let's go. I watched as they handcuffed my son and led him out of the house, along with Amber and the fake doctor. I never imagined it would come to this. Jessica stayed with us while a real doctor, called by Captain Arriaga, examined Helen. Fortunately, the sedative they had given her was relatively harmless, and the effects were beginning to wear off. Mr. Arthur, Jessica said to me as we waited in the kitchen, the situation has become very complicated for Nathan and the Ledesmas. This goes beyond a family dispute over property. They have committed serious crimes. I nodded, feeling an enormous weight on my shoulders. What will happen now? It depends partly on you, she replied. You can press formal charges for all the crimes committed, which would likely result in prison sentences, especially for Nathan and the Ledesmas, who orchestrated all of this. The thought of seeing my son in prison, as furious as I was with him, broke my soul. And if we don't press charges? Jessica looked at me with understanding. That's also an option. But I'm afraid that if there are no serious consequences, they might try again in the future. People like the Ledesmas don't stop easily. I spent a sleepless night, sitting by the bed where Helen slept, now fully recovered from the sedative. As I watched her breathe peacefully, I reflected on everything that had happened and what we should do. The next morning, after breakfast and a long talk with Helen, we made a decision. We called Jessica and asked her to accompany us to the station. Captain Arriaga was waiting for us there, and he informed us that Nathan, Amber, and the fake doctor were still in custody. The Ledesmas had been located and questioned, but were free for the time being. We've decided how to proceed, I told Martin and Jessica when we sat down in his office. We don't want Nathan to go to prison. Jessica nodded sympathetically. I understand your feelings, Mr. Arthur. But, however, I interrupted her. We don't want this to go without consequences either. I want Nathan to understand the gravity of what he did, to learn his lesson. What exactly are you proposing? The captain asked. Helen took my hand and looked at me, giving me the strength to continue. We want to make a deal, I explained. Nathan must completely distance himself from the Ledesmas, divorce Amber, if necessary, get an honest job, and support himself. And as long as he demonstrates that he is changing, that he is taking responsibility for his life, we will not press charges for what happened yesterday. And the Ledesmas? Jessica asked. We do want to proceed legally against them, Helen affirmed firmly. They are the real culprits in all of this. They manipulated our son. They pressured him. They turned him into what he is now. Jessica and Captain Arriaga exchanged glances. I can arrange a meeting with the DA's office, Jessica said finally. But we will need Nathan to cooperate, to testify against the Ledesmas. Without his testimony, it will be difficult to prosecute them effectively. I'll talk to him, I said. I'll explain the situation. An hour later, I was sitting across from Nathan in a small room at the station. He looked haggard, with deep dark circles under his eyes, and an expression of total defeat. Dad, he began as soon as he saw me. Listen to me carefully. Nathan, I interrupted, your mother and I have decided not to press charges against you, under certain conditions. I explained in detail what we had agreed upon. His separation from the Ledesmas, the need to find an honest job, to support himself. And most importantly, I added, we need you to testify, to tell everything you know about the Ledesmas, about how they pressured you, about their plans for our house. Everything. Nathan looked at me with a mixture of surprise and relief. I'm not going to jail? No. If you meet these conditions, I replied. But understand something. Nathan, this is your last chance. If you ever try anything like this again, if you betray us again, there will be no more mercy. I watched as tears began to run down his face. I'm so sorry. Dad, he said, his voice breaking. I got carried away. Mr. Harold promised me so much. An important job, money, recognition, everything I always wanted without really having to work for it. That's the root of the problem. Son, I said, feeling a mixture of sadness and compassion. You've always looked for the easy way out, but life doesn't work that way. What's gained without effort isn't valued. He nodded slowly, as if he finally understood. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything, he promised. I'll tell them how it was Mr. Harold who planned everything from the beginning, how he pressured me, how they forged Mom's signature. Good, I said, getting up to leave. Miss Castaneda will be here soon to take your formal statement. When I was about to leave, Nathan called out to me. Dad, he said, his voice trembling, do you think you and Mom will ever be able to forgive me? I stopped at the door, without turning to look at him. Forgiveness is earned, Nathan, with actions, not with words, I replied. Show us you've changed. Then we'll talk about forgiveness. The following weeks were intense. With Nathan's testimony and the evidence we had gathered, the DA's office was able to prosecute the Ledesmas for multiple crimes: forgery of documents, attempted fraud, coercion, accessory to administering substances without consent, among others. Nathan, just as he had promised, completely distanced himself from them. He moved into a small apartment on the other side of town and, with Roger's help, got a job as an administrative assistant at the transport cooperative. Amber, seeing her husband testify against her parents, immediately filed for divorce and returned to her family's home. The rumors were that Mr. Harold had lost several important contracts after his reputation was tarnished by the court case. Helen and I continued with our lives, more united than ever after this ordeal. The house, now protected by the trust we had established, continued to be our refuge, the symbol of a lifetime of honest work and sacrifice. Months passed before we agreed to see Nathan again. It was a brief, awkward meeting in a neutral coffee shop. He told us about his job, about how he was learning to stand on his own 2 feet for the first time in his adult life. It's not easy, he admitted, but I feel like I'm finally doing the right thing. There was no big, emotional reconciliation, no movie-like hugs, just a tentative, fragile beginning of rebuilding. The road to forgiveness would be long and difficult. Over time, the visits became more frequent. Nathan never lived with us again. He never fully regained our trust, but little by little he began to show, with actions, not words, that he had learned his lesson, that he understood that an inheritance is not a right, but something earned with years of character and action. As for the Ledesmas, justice ran its course. They didn't receive prison sentences, but they did get substantial fines and legal restrictions that significantly limited their business activities. One afternoon, while Helen and I were drinking coffee on our small porch, watching the sunset over our town, she took my hand and looked at me with those eyes that, after more than 4 decades together, were still my anchor and my north. You know, Arthur, sometimes I think all this had to happen, she said. Maybe Nathan needed to hit rock bottom to find his way. Maybe, I replied, gently squeezing her hand. I just regret that we had to suffer so much in the process. Suffering builds character, she said, with that quiet wisdom that always defined her. The important thing is that in the end, we all learned something. Nathan learned about consequences and responsibility, and we learned that we are stronger than we thought. I completed. She nodded, resting her head on my shoulder, and that what we built together, no one can take away from us, not even our own sun. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky orange and purple. Our house, modest but decent, stood firm behind us, a silent witness to a shared lifetime of struggles and triumphs, of disappointments and renewed hopes. And as I held Helen, I understood that that was what truly mattered. Not the walls, not the deed, but what we had built together. A life of honesty, of hard work, of unbreakable love. That was our true legacy, one that no one, not even those closest to us, could ever take away. If my story moved you, and you found it valuable, don't forget to subscribe to William's Revenge Stories and activate notifications. Your support encourages me to keep sharing these life experiences that we can all learn from.